Many people know that stress can affect the body, but can stress actually contribute to chronic or recurring pain? My answer is an absolute yes. For me, myself, my first major experience with chronic and recurring pain happened in 2009 while I was in Serangoon Junior College canoeing and kayaking team. At that time, Singapore was preparing to host the Youth Olympic Games in 2010. It was a pretty big event. I'm not sure if you can still remember the song. Uh, that's like really really inspiring.
Raise your hand for our generation, living out your aspiration. Time to fly, way beyond the skies. A world that shines for
Because of the Youth Olympic Games to be hosted in Singapore, so MacRitchie Reservoir would be used for the Olympic canoeing and kayaking events. So the usual inter-school competitions were brought forward by several months. For many student athletes, that meant having less time to prepare for what would be our final competition before graduation. For those who's in the final year, and that's most people would for most people it will be if someone is in year two in 2009, then of course MI it will be year three. If it happens that someone studying in MI, that's a 3 year program, and he or she is in year three in 2009, then he or she will be affected just like me. So to make up for the shorter preparation period, my coach compressed the usual training volume into a much shorter time frame. And at the same time, Serangoon Junior College, SRJC, had right now SRJC it has merged with SAJC, by the way. But back then, before that merge, SRJC had the habit of pushing graduating students ahead of the academic syllabus, so there would be more time for revision before the final examinations. It is the strategy that the school adopted. So as a result, I found myself having to deal with heavy physical demands and heavy academic demands concurrently. I remember feeling tired very often, and me having flu-like symptoms was it was kind of the norm. Okay? It really did not feel good at all. And recovery felt increasingly difficult. Recovery from training, not just physical recovery, the mental recovery, like every time I study really hard and I feel that my brain is crammed with a lot of things, and that for that crammy feeling to go away, it also started to take longer. And I started going to class with that crammy feeling still on, and trying to learn new things on top of that. So my overall state was just declining. Then one day, while running, I felt a sharp pain in my right knee. The pain was sudden enough that I had to gradually slow myself down and limp to a stop. It came while I was uh constant pace jogging. I was already at that controlled speed. At that I intended to actually stick with that speed. And then when that pain came, yeah, that's when I I had to slow myself down into a limp. That moment changed a lot. Before entering junior college, I was actually close to 90 kilograms while standing a little bit shorter than 1.7 meters tall. And through the many months of training, I had become leaner, stronger, and much more capable physically. By the start of year 2009, basically I entered SRJC early 2000, start of 2008. And then later I joined the canoeing and kayaking team. Then I became leaner, stronger, I get into better shape. Then by the start of 2009, my body weight hovered around 69 to 72 kilograms, depending on how hydrated I am and how exhausted I am from training. And I also became a little bit closer to 1.7 meters tall. And the point the point was I was moving far more easily than before. But after the injury, everyday activities suddenly become very difficult. Training became painful. Kayaking was also painful. Many people do not know that when you are kayaking, okay, kayaking is not a purely upper body movement. Okay, kayaking does involve a bit of a hip and knee straightening while paddling to actually to allow more efficient boat transfer. Okay, that one is a little bit technical and more specific to the sport itself. But the point is it does use a bit of lower limb, so it did affect me. I had to bear with that pain while kayaking. And the injury itself, I mean, apart from training being painful, kayaking being painful, simple movements in my daily life, getting into a seat, getting out of a seat, moving around, climbing the stairs, moving from school to McRitchie Reservoir to train, moving from one part of the school to another part of the school. Suddenly it felt really painful. And the injury itself became another source of stress. At some point, I, I even could not help it but to ask myself, oh, what if I did not join this competitive sports team? If I did not join this competitive sports team and I just exercise casually on my own, would things be a lot better? I probably, I thought about it, I probably wouldn't have such a strong training foundation. I wouldn't be as well trained. I and because I will probably end up exercising more casually. As a result, I may not get injured, but I may not be as much in. I may not be in as good as a shape back then. So, which I know that is really pointless, but I like back then I really couldn't help it. I guess it was my way of dealing with the emotional stress. But of course, uh, despite all this, despite the challenges that I face, I'm glad that I still managed to create memorable experience during my final races before my kayaking journey came to an end. So it's not all bleak. It's just that like that there are moments of glory that came with the final competition going through it, and even though there's a bit of right knee pain when I'm going through my race and everything when I uh, train for it, but the moments of glory was still there. It's just that going back to the everyday mundane when my injury is with me, that just really suck. Uh, After my final races, I shifted my focus towards academics, of course, and assume that without the demands of the competitive training, my body would return to more to would return back to normal. That's what I thought. Okay. But the problem was it did not. Things did not become normal. My knee pain never fully disappeared. It stayed with me as I went into army, and yeah, it also affected me a lot when I'm in army. Even though I was downgraded, there are some things that in some manners whereby I was still affected. Eh, But the good news is, while I was going through national service full time, at some point I successfully get myself referred. And in short, I received professional help, and my condition did improve a lot. And at some point of improving, when my condition became like better, there are periods of lower stress when I could remain pain-free. So there was a time whereby I successfully no longer have my chronic pain, but I still have recurring pain. So the basically the pain comes and goes, and the pain does fluctuate also. When the pain comes, it's not like the pain level is the exact same. Sometimes it can be zero, like no pain, and sometimes it's a very mild pain, and sometimes the pain becomes pretty bad. But then over time, I began noticing something interesting. Whenever life became more stressful, my knee discomfort often became more frequent. Later on, after I finished army, when I moved on to university, uh, because I recovered enough, I was uh, I was able to join a dance club in university when I entered NTU, and I pursued funk dance, which is both popping and locking. I started off learning both popping and locking, and I eventually narrowed my focus toward popping and its more illusion-based styles. So popping is actually a pretty interesting dance style with many different diverse sub-style. There is a more dancing style and another style that's more illusion. And then of course between the dancing style and the illusion style, there are more subcategories. But my point is I lean more towards the illusion-based styles. Only thing is even when I was dancing and I was also progressing, I was leveling up, I still was affected by my recurring knee pain and knee discomfort. It's like whenever life became more stressful, when I face academic pressure, or when I'm preparing for dance performances, or when I go through temporary work commitments during the term break or during the break between academic years, and even major life events, my knee pain will become more frequent, and it did not just affect my physical comfort. It also affected my ability to progress in dance. So I mentioned that preparing for dance performances is one of the stresses. So the preparing for dance performances, I'm actually referring to choreography, which is a set of moves, and then the intention is to follow through the exact step of move and execute it based on whatever pre-planned music and hit the beat based on plan. And when I say my recurring knee discomfort affected my ability to progress in dance, this progress I'm actually referring to overall leveling up, more towards freestyling. Of course, the choreography that I go through, I would have practiced and drilled certain moves that can help me in my freestyle solo. But the point here is I I felt that my creative freedom was being restricted because there are certain movements that I was not capable of, that I was not steadily capable of. Because it's one thing to be not able to do something because of a lack of physical capability and capacity, and it's another to have fluctuating physical capacity that makes me wonder, oh, am I able to do that? Am I able to pull off that move? Will my knee discomfort or even knee pain like comes back suddenly if I were to uh do that move? And it really affected the way I freestyle, because there are times when I felt like I want to do certain things, and then I stop myself because I'm worried that I will injure something. And I remember that my dance instructor often told me that when I take steps, things looks kind of awkward. I was probably really worried about about certain pain coming back to me. So it was that itself was actually pretty stressful, which I think I mentioned this before in one of my earlier videos. And and what made things worse was that my creative freedom of expression, or rather my my physical ability, is affected by my recurring injury. And it it felt similar to my experiences back in my kayaking days when I got injured, when I get restricted. Now that when I look back, I can see how stress and pain often reinforce each other in a cycle. And one of the biggest examples came later when my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 appendix cancer. Her battle lasted for months while I was completing one of my university semester and most of my internship. So I have this university semester and an internship that takes place right after the university semester. So when my mom's terminal illness diagnosis came, it was when it was when this semester just started, and she continued to battle the terminal illness until my semester ends and I go through internship. And during my final few weeks of during right when I'm about to finish my internship, when my internship is left with a couple of more weeks, that's when she finally passed on, which was actually a relief and at the same time heartbreaking. Her suffering finally ended. She battled it out, and she finally did not have to suffer. Looking back at the period between receiving the diagnosis and my mother's eventual passing, something stands out to me. I have almost no memory of noticing my knee pain during that time, but it's not because it was necessarily gone, but because my attention was consumed by something that felt far more significant and beyond my control. Years later, even after entering the fitness industry and learning more advanced approaches to pain management, I continue noticing similar patterns between stress, recovery, pain recurrence, and physical function. These observations were not based on like a single incident. They emerged repeatedly across different stages of my life. As I worked with more people over the years, I also began noticing similar patterns in others, although the extent and expression varied from person to person. Some experienced more tension during stressful periods. Some found old aches becoming more noticeable. Others recovered more slowly when stress accumulated. So this series of experiences from my kayaking days in SRJC, my dance days in uni, my later experiences in the fitness industry, and observations from helping others all taught me that pain, stress, attention are often more interconnected than we realize. And this is one of the reasons why chronic stress forms a key component of the Omni-Ease method that I developed. Stress does not always directly create pain, but stress can influence recovery. Stress can influence tension. It can influence resilience. And when those factors accumulate over time, recurring pain often becomes harder to escape. The good news is that stress is not simply something that happens to us. There are practical ways. I'm referring to chronic stress, by the way. Okay, acute stress definitely we have to go through it, especially for physical training. The whole point of maximizing your physical training is to actually try to minimize your chronic stress as much as possible, so that you can take more acute stress during the intense short bouts of training based on your fitness level, based on where you are, how conditioned you are to training, and even to how conditioned you are to the specific uh, training methodology. If you are new to a training methodology, even if you are very seasoned in being physically trained in general, okay. But if you decide to start something totally different and totally new, then of course, there will be a need to be conservative. But my point here is the chronic stress, which is stress accumulated over time and recurring uh, pain often becomes harder to escape. The good news is that There are practical ways to improve how we recover from it, adapt to it, and reduce its impact on our well-being. That's why addressing chronic stress is one of the first steps toward achieving sustained pain relief, at least according to the Omni-Ease method that I've developed. And if you would like to understand this topic in greater detail, I've included a link to the full article that I wrote in the description below. The article explores how chronic stress and recurring pain can reinforce one another, as well as practical areas that you can begin paying attention to when working towards sustained pain relief. And let me just share my screen with you so that you can have a glimpse of this article. Yeah, so this is the article here. I will of course insert the link in the description below as promised. Yeah, and this is the full Omni-Ease method. Stress being one of it amongst the different things that we look at. But this article focuses primarily on stress and stress management. Yeah, yeah, and that's all. Peace.